So I would like to now introduce Mark Costello, who is Manager of Partnerships and Policy at Djaara. Is a recent grad, if you like, or alumni of the Williamson program, and to speak about his experiences. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Nathan. And we're struggling for bandwidth here, so if I am glitchy, put me to later on, because my co-host in here this evening is popping off their meeting shortly. I join you from Djaara country near Bendigo in central Victoria. An early observation for me in starting the program was that it wasn't the professional development program that I was anticipating. And early on I found, and it wasn't about taking the next step up just because that was a logical progression, or about how to be more popular as a leader or a manager in the workplace. What it is a leadership program that's about you, all about you, and all leadership in all of your life, not just work. I chose to undertake the program because I wanted to be a more deliberative leader, not just relying on my intuition. But what it did for me was provide a really clear understanding of where I come from, my story, but most importantly, where I'm going. Before the program, I was very comfortable in my life and career. My leadership was good, consistently good feedback from staff and peers and managers. But it was intuitive and still coming from a place, for me, a place of not wanting to be judged and seen to be doing the right thing. Whereas now I'm really clear. I'm really clear in what I stand for, what I stand up for, and what I won't walk past. And in a career sense, some might suggest now that I've taken a step back from what might have come next, but what I've done is taken a giant step forward to where I want to be, and have made room for other things in my life that are really important to me. What's stuck with me from the program, just so much, and I was just reflecting before coming in here, most days there's something from the program that sits with me or I'm reflecting on and trying to apply. I see the world and how I interact with it quite differently. I've learned that what I thought was a quite modest life with a sense of entitlement is genuinely a life of privilege. And I learned that I give my power away far too easily, or don't use it as effectively as I could. And when I retain and use my power, I can make a difference for others who may not have a voice or the same level of power and privilege. And I've learned how to use that power as an ally, to walk with others, not to appropriate their stories and speak for them, but to understand their perspective and to amplify their voice where they might want that done. The art of asking great questions has stuck with me, and the confidence to practice asking great questions in places where I might sit back and enjoy others asking those questions. The program of speakers that you have access to is amazing, and genuine access, not just a 10-minute presentation and a see ya. But for me in particular, Rosie Batty stuck with me. If you're not familiar with Rosie, unfortunately she lost her son Luke to domestic violence. Before that moment, Rosie was not a prominent leader or an advocate. She didn't have a sense of that she would be or would need to be. But in a moment, Rosie made the choice to step forward into the unknown, and the choice has made a positive difference for so many. And also as a leader, Rosie's been transparent and vulnerable in her challenges with that, which has also really stuck with me. And I've said to myself many times when I've thought things in leadership were too hard that, you know, if Rosie could do it, then I can do it. If it means enough to me, that I can keep going forward. Surprises in the program were the difference and the sameness of all the participants. I thought I was a bit of an outcast, and most others thought that they were an outcast too. But we all bring histories, and we make a difference when we're together. I was thinking earlier today, it's a bit like a Rubik's cube. I had a lot of the content resonated with me, But on the other side of the program, it feels like all the colours and the lines have lined up. It makes much more sense to me. I didn't enter the program thinking I'd make genuine friends, but I have, and I think they'll friends that will stick with me for a long time. And also, what surprised me was that with good process and practice, a small group of individuals with limited knowledge in something can still make a really big difference. Why do I think you should do it? Well, I'll start with why I think you shouldn't. If you're not going to immerse yourself and prioritise your participation, you will limit what you get out of it. So be ready. Why you should: if you're someone who wants to know yourself better, you're standing in the world and do something constructive, then this is a great program for you. If you'd like to strengthen your networks across sectors, industries, geographies, and a whole range of other demographics, then this is a great program for you. If you'd like to know where you've individually and collectively come from as a way of moving forward, then this is a great program for you. And lastly, if you're ready to be curious, to wonder and see the world from many new perspectives, then this is a great program for you.
Thanks, Mark. Some really valuable insights there. And right at the start, you mentioned that it's a leadership program that's all about you. I hadn't actually thought of that, to put that on the cover of the brochure, but it does make sense in that one of the principles that you'll learn as part of the program, the principles of adaptive leadership, is that leadership does start with you. It must involve others and engage others, but it does start with you. Thanks, Mark. I'd now invite Lara Carton to speak. Lara is Executive Director, Corporate Strategy at the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions.
Thanks very much, Nathan. Hello, everyone. I'm speaking to you today from Wurundjeri country in metropolitan Melbourne. It's lovely to see so many of you here. It feels quite odd to think that I've just spent the last year doing Williamson. It feels like it, in some ways, it went through in the blink of an eye, but at the time it sometimes felt like a bit of a hard slog. Williamson was something that I had wanted to do for quite a few years. I had spoken to various people in my professional life and personal life who had done it, and it always sounded really interesting, but I didn't quite know what it was. And I think, as Ange alluded to, it's still a bit hard to describe exactly what it is, other than it's certainly life-changing, and it's certainly not a prescriptive program where you simply accumulate knowledge in the way that you might think of some other leadership or training programs. I thought going into it that it was a career piece for me. I was supported by my organisation. I wasn't working for state government. I was working for a large regional university. And I thought it was about developing me as a better leader within my organisation. But actually, it really ended up being, I think, as Mark alluded to, more about consideration of how I want to be in the world and how I want to turn up and be present both within my organisation and in formal leadership roles, but really how I want to be as a leader in community and in less formal organisations. When I started, I was pretty comfortable in my role. It was COVID, to be fair, was a great opportunity for me to do it because I couldn't really travel. And so I was in Melbourne and I felt I needed a good mental challenge, and it certainly gave me that. I think one of the things you might see or hear about Williamson is that a lot of people who go through the program change jobs. I'm one of them. Not necessarily because of Williamson, but I think in talking to a number of people who've been through the program, Williamson starts the process where you just get itchy feet. You want to test your ideas. You want to continue to challenge yourself. And just before you all joined tonight, we were having a bit of a chat, and I said one of the things I love about changing jobs is how much I'm learning and challenging myself. And I think if you're looking for a mental challenge, then Williamson is certainly going to give you that. Ange talked a little bit, I think, about the lenses that we view the content of Williamson through, those being sort of belonging, privilege, power, things like that. For many of us, Williamson was also about exposure to a range of social issues or societal perspectives that maybe we had, for some people, deep knowledge about. That might be environmental issues or diversity or the regional metro divide, something like that. But sometimes I think we certainly, I felt that I already had formed an opinion and I didn't really need that challenged. And I realized after delving into it that I actually didn't have a very strongly held opinion, or I had a particularly ill-informed opinion. And one of the great advantages of the program was simply having the time and the space to talk and consider with other people why I held particular opinions and how they held different opinions and what informed that. And it's just an incredible opportunity to really dive into important issues that affect us all personally, and also in a work context often, that many of us, and certainly I just wouldn't normally get in a personal or professional context. So simply the space, having the mental space was such a luxury, although sometimes it felt a bit hard to find the mental space. What was really interesting was that while many of us might share similarities around, I don't know, sort of age, or we're all working in, to some extent, professional roles, or have reached a certain level in our professional career, that there are very few commonly held beliefs, and that can sometimes feel really uncomfortable when people are challenging ideas. But that was part of what made the experience so incredible, was to hear the different perspectives coming in from colleagues from the cohort. I have to do a call out to Ange and Lisa. Mark talked about the quality of the speakers that we had access to, and they really are just phenomenal. But the incredible curation of the whole program, the thinking that goes into how it's designed, how it's presented, how we're supported, how we're challenged, and then how they lower the heat a little bit so that we can all catch our breath, is really quite exceptional. It really is quite a deep, immersive experience. It's hard to sort of sit back and just be an observer to the process. Like Mark, I also didn't go into this thinking that I would necessarily develop a deep connection, but I believe I've probably developed some lifelong friends through the program, and certainly a cohort of people that I'm pretty confident I could call on at any time to help me muddle through an ethical or leadership type problem, whether that's personal or professional. And there's a bit of a saying in Williamson that you commit to answering the call. So if someone calls, a Williamson person calls and asks for help, you commit to taking that call and helping where you can. I guess some specific observations or learnings for me about the program. One of them is that not all leadership has to be loud or big or very public. There are a number of very quiet leaders in the group, people who are doing quite amazing things, both within their professional roles and in community. And it was great to understand that leadership looks different in different contexts. It can be really hard to find the time and the space to commit to the program. Mark made the comment that you should really immerse yourself in it, and if you're not giving it your all, then maybe question it. I don't know, I probably have a different perspective. I think that everyone comes at it in different ways. Certainly the more you put in, the more you get out. That's true of most things. But everyone got something out of it, even the people who couldn't get through the reading every week, even the people who couldn't get to all of the sessions. So I guess don't let the volume of work put you off, if that's a consideration. I think some people see it as one of those milestone learning pieces, like, oh, I've got an MBA and I've done the Institute of Company Directors course. What's next? Don't see it like that. This is really about building on you as a person and developing a wider perspective rather than sort of a tick the box and move on my way. It really is something that will change people's perspective, or your perspective on what you do next and how you approach your future roles. And I guess in summary, I can't really tell you how it's changed me, but I'm certainly confident that it has, and I suspect for the next couple of years I will continue to find things where I recognise that I have changed my thinking or developed my thinking or continue to develop my thinking as a result of doing the program.
Thanks, Lara. We talk about, just at what you were talking about at the end there, it reminds me of I guess, an analogy that we make about the program and the type of learning and experience that it is. And so if you are comparing it to a learning program like an MBA and so forth, that's what we call, and Ange said this at the start, horizontal learning, where you're sort of just downloading more knowledge, thinking about downloading apps onto your phone. But what the Williamson experience does is it actually upgrades your phone's operating system. So Lara is now Lara 2.0 as a result of doing the program, but it is very much that is the effect of the program. You're not just coming along and downloading more knowledge, you're actually changing your operating system. Thanks, Lara. I would now like to invite Dave Green to speak about his experience. Dave is currently the, I had your title all ready to go, Dave.
Right,
Hume Bank, Head of Distribution at Hume Bank.
Yeah, Head of Third-Party Distribution, that's
yes.
It. All good. Thank you. Okay, so how would I describe the impact of Williamson on myself and my leadership? So I would start by saying Williamson gave me the tools to be more vulnerable. So that's absolutely something that has shone through for me, and vulnerability with my honesty with self and my honesty with others. So, and I'm talking in both a corporate setting, in a not-for-profit setting, in a personal life setting. It really freed me. It was a really interesting experience for me. It also enabled me to see that I am comfortable when it gets really hot and others are not. So I can take a lot of tension. In fact, I enjoy a lot of tension in a room, but that can be really disengaging for others. So it helped me understand that a lot better. But the one thing that Williamson did, perhaps more than anything else, it captured and enhanced my storytelling ability. And it absolutely released that for me and showed me the value of storytelling in a leadership context, and that leadership's an activity, not a title. So you can use your leadership for good or evil, I will say, but it absolutely storytelling, and that was also through the vulnerability piece. And it's something I reflect on in my current role. In fact, I've given some reflections to Ange over the journey. One of the first meetings I had in my new role, I decided to be very vulnerable and very honest when asked about what I believed was happening in the room. And it was my first meeting with a new group of leaders. And I was very vulnerable, very honest, and told them I didn't think they communicated very well. Downloaded a whole lot of wonderings, which if you do Williamson, you'll get to really learn about the wonderings. Wonderings can be very powerful because wonderings are quite friendly. And then I think about how leadership has enabled me to support my organisation. This was an interesting one because I was also switched jobs, which is a common theme through Williamson. And I think you just reset your compass. It's as simple as that. So More now, I support my organisation because I'm able to hold a counter view in my mind whilst considering options. So Williamson was great in enabling me to do that, because I came from, and I mean, we meet people with all different backgrounds, etc. I was corporate through and through. In fact, I was out of a job when I did Williamson. I self-funded it. I was running my own business at the time. I entered with very different reasons as to why I wanted to do it with what I walked away with. So, you know, I had done the MBA and this and that and a few other things, and considered myself to be successful and all the rest of it. And I saw it as a great networking opportunity to get my next role. It was really interesting because my next role didn't come from Williamson, but more of Williamson. So that was really good. And being able to hold that counter view. So it's very, and it also, Williamson has helped me learn that to change someone's mind, you need to meet them where they are and take them on a journey. You're not going to change somebody's mind from being combative. You're just going to keep them where they are, and you're going to stay where you are, and you're both going to leave frustrated. And if I'm recommending Williamson for you, apart from what's already been said, I would say be present. Okay, so if you don't do the reading, you don't do the reading. But when you're in the room, be present. Be prepared to listen, and be prepared to listen to understand. You will get, the more you give, the more you'll get. That, no doubt about that. But if you really want to grow as a person, be present during the program. And I reflected on this one too, when it said what were some of the challenges you faced when thinking about applying. For me, it was it going to be value? Am I going to get value out of the course, considering that I had left a job after a long period of time there, had started my own business? It's not cheap. It's definitely valuable, no question about that. But making those considerations before entering, that was a big one for me. I found the interview process for Williamson really interesting. I really enjoyed it to get onto the course. And then when I started talking to all the people that I'd be doing it with for the next 12 months, the first of the COVID cohort, as I like to call this, it was great just for all the different backgrounds and learning about people. And that call is very true. If someone calls you from the program, you pick up the phone, or you engage with them, and it's even now, new organisation, met someone that had done it, met other people that have done it, and you just share stories, share learnings. It's its own organism, actually, that's out there growing leaders. It's fantastic. So I think I'll leave it there and welcome any questions at the end.
Thanks, Dave. You talk about something that many alumni speak about when they come on and do these info sessions and talk about the program, and certainly vulnerability is one of those things. And what I hear often is that people come through the program and then they realize it's okay not to have all the answers all the time. It's okay to sit with the question. And in fact, it's good to sit with the question. So yeah, a really common theme. And also you talked about the interview process there, just to let everybody know. So the process of applying for Williamson, you complete a written application, and there'll be an email come around after this session with a link to the Award Force platform, which is where you can find the application portal, and you can complete your application. You can come and go, save as much as you want. You've got until the Monday, the 1st of August to get it in. It's not an overly onerous process. There's really 5 or 6 key questions with a 100-word limit. Sometimes the challenge is actually keeping to the 100-word limit, but that gives you an idea of the process. And then following that, should you be successful after the written round, you will be asked to attend an interview. The interview is with a panel. There's normally an LV staffer and a couple of alumni like Dave, Mark and Lara, who will be asking you questions about your motivations and really why should you take a place on the program. It's competitive entry. So really think about what will doing the program enable you to do better or how will you pay it forward, the experience of doing the program? They're the type of questions that you can expect. And then, so that will all take place. So the written applications are due the 1st of August. Interviews will happen sort of August and September, and then if successful, offers will be made in October, is the general way it kind of works. Great. Well, that's the end of the speaking part of it. Now I'd really like to open up to your questions. So the best way to do that is using the raise your hand function. So at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see an area called reactions. If you click on that, you'll see a button called raise hand. So that's how we know that you've got a question to ask. And then either David or myself will notice that and invite you to speak. We'll take you off mute, or you can take yourself off mute and ask the question. And you can choose to direct it towards a particular person or ask a more general question. So would anybody like to kick us off? This is, I feel like I'm an auctioneer. We're looking for an opening bid. Who's got a question? Oh, there we go. Thanks, Fatima. We'll get people to unmute themselves, David.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Fatima.
Hello there. Hi, David, Nathan. Thanks for taking my question. My question is probably to one of the presenters today and part of the alumni from last year. In regards to what they perceived to be the definition of leadership prior to entering the program, as opposed to what transpired after the program, and if their opinion of the definition of leadership changed for them. I'm going to start probably with Lara on that one.
Hi, Fatima. Thanks for the question. I'm really hopeless with definitions, so I couldn't even tell you how I might have previously defined it. What I can tell you, though, was I probably thought leadership was prior to the program, I would have thought leadership was as much about following a set of actions or steps or being seen to do the right thing. So the perception of it, as opposed to now, it's about, I think Dave talked about it as being vulnerable. It's about just being able to bring yourself with an ethical, considered perspective that understands that people will look at whatever context you're dealing with quite differently and try to navigate a way through that. So I'm not sure that that's a clear definition, but it's gone from being an action to being about, bringing the whole person.
Thank you, Lara. And if I may, I'd like to hear also from Mark, if that's okay. I'm not sure if I'm taking up your time there. And Nathan?
Look, I'll try and be quick and articulate, which can be a challenge in both fronts. Coming into it, I thought I was of the view that leadership is a behaviour, is actions, not so much a position. But what I thought it was more about was about developing and supporting others to be their best. What's shifted for me is it has come from the place of understanding the role that I can play and that being more active and deliberate in the way that I lead. And yes, so a quick example is I've been on my kids' primary school council, and I think I was there because I thought I was making a contribution and I'd participate in it. I'm on a different school council now, and the things that I'm bringing to that is, so where's the diversity in this council? Where there are kids with high levels of truancy, and we're seeing a particular cohort not go well when they transition to the senior school, what do we know about those people, and what programs are we putting in place so they don't fall through the gap? I wouldn't be coming at it with those same perspectives and certainly the same way if I was in this place without Williamson.
Thanks, Mark. Fatima, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much, Nathan. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Sorry, the next question is just from somebody that has the label iPhone on their screen. Sorry. Oh, you just take yourself off mute. There we go. Yep.
So I apologise. I do have a name. I'm Vanessa Andine, and I'm sorry my phone is playing up.
Hi, Vanessa.
I have a very practical question. In an ideal world, if the speakers have talked about participating as much as possible, an ideal level of participation, what would that look like on a weekly basis in terms of time?
Well, that's a great question. So for me, I'm a notorious crammer, but then I found it didn't work for Williamson some of the time because I wanted to read more. So you'd get through the article after a little while, then you'd think, no, I want to know more about that, or I want to know more about the speaker. I want to be prepared to ask an interesting question, or I want to be prepared to learn more about something or challenge myself. So I think it's more so for me was the preparation in the depth of thought post the readings than what it was in the actual readings. I had to sit with stuff for quite a while compared to previous courses I've done. Previous things I could quite literally read the stuff the night before and be drilled on it and be right for the questions, but it doesn't work like that. You've got to sit with it and think about it and explore it. So, yeah, I mean, it just depends how you approach it, but yeah, that was it for me. It took me considerably more time, but it was definitely more beneficial.
Thanks, Dave. Did I should ask if anyone felt that they also needed time after a session just to process and re-energize after a Williamson day?
So what worked for me was, so pretty shortly after we'd have a session, I'd check in with my buddy, and we'd have an hour just to talk through what we learned, what we were sitting with, and what we wanted to practice. There was a peer groups are established, and we would have monthly check-ins as a peer group, and they were really useful to support the learning and like legitimately as a peer group. Similar to Dave, I'm a bit of a crammer, and I felt that sort of gave some momentum and continuity. So I was also fortunate in my employer was absolutely on board with what I was doing, and was provided me with some additional time to be able to do that work. So going into an immersive or one of the weekends, and I might spend at least a day to do that. But I did think innovatively about it. So for the enchantment weekend, I actually took myself camping and sat and did all the reading in an environmental, in a nature-based setting, which really enhanced that as well. But I appreciate that's not the sort of thing that others can do.
Thanks, Mark. Georgie, you had your hand up. Oh, yes, you've got it. Yes.
Bit self-conscious with my hand up for so long. All good. I was curious from a practical perspective about numbers of the cohort, like how big is the program, how many people actually do it in a year, and also about the kinds of different, I don't know, industries or sectors that are involved. So I work in local government. I also do some volunteer work, but I was just curious about understanding what kind of people it attracts from the get-go. Thanks.
Would anyone like to take that on? What was your experience of numbers and the type of people that were on the program?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in there. I think we had, I'm going to say high 60s or so for our cohort, and we've just finished it a couple of months back. And that's really, it was really neatly broken for the most part into two separate groups. The way the pairings, so Mark referred to his buddy. You have a buddy, which is lovely, someone that you work through the whole time with the program. And then you have these small peer groups and then a larger peer group. And there's beautiful configurations of how you come together in different ways with the large group or the small, or in smaller contexts. So it suits different styles of learning, different styles of communication, which is great. So even though it was, I guess, quite a large group, we weren't all together all that often. The diversity in the room was incredible. People from local government, people from emergency services, some of us from education at the time, people from, utilities companies, a load of people working in the most amazing not-for-profit or for-purpose organisations, people that had founded their own businesses, people who were not currently working but were trying to work out, what the next thing for them is. That's a lovely way of putting it, Mark. It's like a kaleidoscope. It was just fascinating, the mixture of people in the room, people that I might not normally meet in my day-to-day life.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lara. One of the features of the Williamson program is it is a very participatory program. It's really a program based on experimentation, of action, of activity, and asking powerful questions. You'll learn how to ask good, powerful questions. So feel free to experiment here with your questions.
Nath, we've got a hand up from Lindy.
Thanks, Lindy.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation and your time this evening. Mark, I'm particularly interested in the fact that you're from Bendigo. So I'm from regional Victoria as well, and from Gippsland, and I'm just having a look at the content of the program. I'm concerned about the travel and accommodation commitment, and just if you could make some comment about how you found that in terms of timing and work, because it really does take potentially a day and a half to 2 days out of a schedule each time.
Yeah, great question, Lindy, and good consideration. And it is different, but it goes a bit of both ways, in that a couple of the immersions are in regional Victoria as well. Although I do note that Warrnambool's not in the Gippsland side of the state. What is really useful in the time commitments is that they are planned. There's a schedule for the year, so you're able to plan and anticipate what is coming. Personally, I didn't find the travel so much of a barrier. Yes, there particularly for some of the one-off events or evening events, there's an opportunity to go to need to go to Melbourne, but where that was a benefit for me, and again, I appreciate not everyone will have been in the same situation, but I tried to stay down of an evening if I could, and that provided some additional benefit in that there was opportunities to connect with people for a longer period of time than for others who might come along to the event and then go home of an evening. So yeah, it's certainly a question of balance, but I personally didn't find my experience, and the challenges disproportionate to those based in Metro Melbourne. And in some cases, for those, if they were relying on public transport, I might have even got home before they did.
Thanks, Mark.
Sorry if I can say, represent regional Victoria. So if you see so while we have the industries in the cohort on the side, what's the strength is the different places that people live and work, and so you could strongly advocate if and very happy to be available if you find yourself a participant to talk through what worked for me and what worked for some other regional reps, to have those conversations with you, because it's important that regional is represented in the cohort.
Thanks, Mark. The other thing too is a lot of people like to reach out, catch up, network with each other between sessions as well. And that's just something to factor into something that you might want to do or might want to consider when you're planning out your schedule and your time commitment to the program. It's 6:24. I reckon we've got time for one or two more questions, and then I'm going to do a bit of a thank you presentation at the end for our speakers. Frith.
So this is a bit of a sideways question, and is mostly being prompted by something that the person who recommended I look at Williamson said. And I'm just interested to hear from the alumni what your thoughts are about the relationship between, I suppose, leadership and challenging yourself, and a little bit, this seems to be everyone changes jobs, and innovation. So just the relationship sort of between leadership and innovation.
Great question.
I have a very different take on that now. From perhaps not talking exactly to that question, but I feel more comfortable, confident, and competent to embrace innovation in leadership as a result of going through the program. I think there are some approaches to leadership which are within a box or a particular paradigm in terms of the way to apply leadership. But I think the relationship with innovation and leadership is that through Williamson is that there is a strong correlation between the leadership qualities and capabilities that I have learned that improve my ability to innovate and support and encourage others to innovate.
If I can jump in there, I think when you use the phrase innovation, I think in some contexts it can be seen as sort of maybe a technical innovation or a sort of a very forward-looking progressive innovation. I think what we deal with is looking at social innovation. How do you bring more people along with you? How do you provide opportunity to a greater cohort of people? How do you consider issues of equity? So I think Williamson is about expanding people's capacity to consider the social innovation of what they do, rather than maybe a more technical or traditional approach to innovation.
Yeah, that's interesting, Lara, because I put down innovation needs collaboration. And that was the one thing that I got out of Williamson, was that additional collaboration and the sharing of ideas, knowing when to step in, knowing when to step out, made a very big difference.
Great, thank you.
Might take one more question if anyone's got a last question. No? Okay, well, we have a tradition at the Williamson Community Leadership Program whereby we thank the people that have made a contribution to the day or to the session, a speaker, with a pair of socks. Now, I'm not able to physically thank our speakers and present them with some socks today, but I can tell and share a story, if you like, of the socks. So I'm just going to try and find said story. I fumble around here with the computer, and I should tell you also that the socks designed by a Williamson alumni called Lara Thompson, who was founder of Clothing the Gap. And the story is one of, I guess, of return, of abundance, of people and nature coming back. And it's also connected to the acknowledgement of country that I made at the start of the session. It's connected to the Boonwurrung people. And so in the months of February and March were known to the Boonwurrung as Waiabil Nai Iwan, and I probably mispronounced that, but it translates as old man sun. But it's also known as the eel season. And the female eels begin their long journey down Birrarung, which we know today, of course, as the Yarra, and the small creeks and rivers that run into Nurm, now known as Port Phillip Bay. And with the arrival of Parib, or spring, the eels begin returning from their long journey. And the return of the eels was celebrated through the dances and the Naji that were held during Parib, or spring. And the eels that returned were salty but plump, and some were roasted over hot coals, the fat causing the coals to flare, and some were preserved to be eaten at a later time. And the migration of the eels provided certainty for the Boonwurrung. The old people had always told them that as surely as the sun would rise every day, the eels would always return in Parib. And the numbers of eels leaving and returning each year was a sign of prosperity. So just as the eels returning were a sign of a healthy ecosystem for the Boonwurrung people, so too are Williamson alumni returning to share their experiences of the program, a sign of a healthy, engaged community of leaders that we seek to foster at Leadership Victoria. So thank you all for coming back and sharing your experiences today. That now officially concludes our session, right on time, 6:30. Couldn't have done it any better. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. As I mentioned, you'll receive an email with some more information, and please do feel free to contact me directly if you've got any further questions about the program or the application process. Always happy to chat.